Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for joining us for our Meet Your Neighbor event, the latest in our Meet Your Neighbor series. My name is Dennis Quinn. I have the privilege of serving as the Director of Services for the Library for the City of Coppell. And a note on a bit of the context for this series of program, Meet Your Neighbor. We began a couple of years ago as sort of an effort to put on stage in the Cozby Library the personal stories and histories of the people that make up our community, to sort of celebrate the growing diversity of our community. And we've covered a number of topics on this panel over the past several years, dealing with issues of immigration, of different faiths, of living with disabilities, and really to make this a chance to showcase the diversity and the stories of our community. And today our theme is going to be stories of members of our community of Asian descent. And in just a moment, I'll be introducing our moderator, who will be introducing our panelists. A few technical notes. As this event is set up as a webinar instead of a meeting, the attendees won't be able to speak or transmit video unless granted permission, just for ease of keeping the communication straight. So as we go through the conversation with our panelists, there will be a chance later in the program for questions from the audience. I'll direct our attendees to use the chat function to submit their questions, and I'll be monitoring that to assist our moderator. I also will let everybody know that this program is being recorded and will be later made available on the city's YouTube channel after staff has been able to go through the transcripting and captioning process. And if at any point you have any questions, either for the panelists or if you're hitting any technical difficulties, please feel free to let us know in the chat, and I'll do my best to assist from the back end as I can. So with those technical notes out of the way, I will begin by introducing our moderator for the day, who is Ms. Rahila Sheikh. Ms. Sheikh is the assistant principal for New Tech High at Coppell. She has been serving in that capacity for about 5 years now, which marks her 15th year in the education sector. She has 7 years experience as humanities coordinator for K through 12, with her last 2 years as a principal intern at a private school in Dubai. As an educator, she's certified and has taught many courses in English and language arts. She has a Bachelor of Arts in English from the University of Texas at Arlington and a Master's in Education from Liverpool Hope University in the UK. And she has also shared that she herself is a first-generation immigrant to the US and is one of the only secondary school administrators of Pakistani descent in the North Texas region, and has done a lot of great work to empower students of Asian descent in her capacity as the assistant principal. And we're really glad to have her here as our moderator for today's event. So with that, I will pass the torch to Ms. Sheikh to introduce the rest of our panel and get us started.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that introduction. I will say before we get started, I want to really encourage the audience to know that the purpose of our event is to share information and get to know each other a lot better in a safe environment. This is not a place for debate or political discussions. It's really just to get to know our neighbors and to get to know who we are as a community. So I'm going to start off with Dia. Dia, if you could please introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, my name is Dia. I'm a junior at Coppell High School. I'm an upcoming senior. I'm an Indian American. My parents immigrated here from India, and they actually met in North Carolina universities. And I'm ready to talk to you guys about whatever you would like to talk to about.
How exciting. Thank you so much. We always love to have the student voice wherever we go because it's such a different perspective. So thank you for being here. Mr. Richard Lee, can you go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Richard Lee. I'm a 16 years Coppell citizen, resident, and I was born in Taiwan. So very happy to have the opportunity to join the panel and kind of share my experience and background. So glad to be here.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And last but not least, we have Ms. Ling. Lou, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be here and first time participating in such a panelist and be glad to share my story. I only moved to Coppell a couple of years ago, so much of my time has been spent in home and quarantined. I have two girls and I'm the first generation, first immigration of my family. So it's really not, most of my family members are in China. However, I spent a lot of time in the US, moved around from North Carolina, South Carolina, Arkansas, so multiple states. So I don't consider myself belonging to one state in particular. I like to think myself as an international citizen. With that being said, we'll dig into this and be happy to answer any questions and share an experience and get to know each other. So. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Liu. I do want to comment on your international citizen statement. I often feel that way too, because I grew up in a whole bunch of different places. I've lived, here across the United States. I was born in California. I've lived in Dubai, the Middle East. I've lived in Pakistan, so East Asia, and very, very different experiences in all three regions. So a question I have for you, what challenges have you gone through just, assimilating in these different environments?
First is always just getting to know the people, getting to know the customs, and the mindset is always different. The culture is always different. And of China, everywhere I go, I know I am different. I didn't grow up here, right? So I speak English, however, I have accent. So I think the first challenge is really just to overcome that culture difference. Over time, it became easier, but the first couple of years coming to the US, not understanding the Southern accent and not able to really just to sit down and look at the menu, even order food. So I think there's this little things in life that you used to just take granted for, and now it became probably a something you have to learn and really get used to. It does become easier over time, but again, that culture difference, I think, especially if you're not growing up here and trying to be part of that culture, it does require a lot more effort.
All right, excellent. So Dia, you actually were born here, right? And you grew up here?
Yeah, I was born in Chicago, and then when I was around 5, my family moved us down to Texas. So I think most of my changes and experiences is being with Indian and immigrant parents, while a lot of friends from my school did not have immigrant parents. And so really learning about our different experiences and kind of being jealous, oh, wow, they have pot roast. I wonder when we ever have pot roast. But over time, I think it was really starting to appreciate my culture over time. Like, I love our food. I love learning about our religion. I love these types of things and what my parents teach us about their experiences. So yeah, just appreciation over time is kind of my biggest thing, that change that happened.
Mr. Lee, how about you? Did you face any challenges recently or when you came here?
I think Lou mentioned that this happened to many of us, like immigrant, and we all went through this and learning process, and we all went through the adjustment to the new culture and new society, especially like we say, we are immigrant. But I think there's one thing I need to mention was we all carry the culture with us. I was born in Taiwan. I moved to stay around in my early 20s. So that is part of myself and part of immigrant. And I bring into different perspective, different culture to the American, to the society. And at the same token, also on the other hand, we need to learn how to adjust new lifestyle and to understand better the American culture, American history, and to know everybody. And just like we have to get know the new citizen, new friends, and that there's a I think we absorb a lot of different cultures, include myself, my background, and we have better understand to understand different people, and we know they are different, they carry different culture, different background, and I think that we'll not say it is challenging, but just that's the way we are, and I think we can bring that to the society, and the challenge will be, hey, a lot of things is new. You never seen before. You never know why, because I used to live in Oregon, now in Texas. So there you can tell there's a different society, different culture, different way to do the things. But that's a good thing. So we have a chance to meet new people and get to know new society, and we can contribute. And that's the thing that we can accomplish. And that's why I like to be here, can answer questions and share my thoughts.
Thank you. I do want to mention that all three of you guys did say how much you love your culture and how much you still want it to be a huge part of you. And I know growing up over here, my parents would speak to me in Urdu only when they were yelling at me. So I understood it, but I wasn't able to speak it until I actually had an arranged marriage in Pakistan. And when I went to go live there, I didn't speak the language at all. And I had to learn it pretty fast because everyone there speaks Urdu or Punjabi. And so I remember feeling like such an outsider over there. And even though it was difficult because sometimes I felt like I was an outsider here, but then I go back to my parents' country and I feel like I'm an outsider there. So I was not really feeling like I fit anywhere. And when my child was born, one of the things that I really wanted to do was teach her language. And so I made sure that growing up, she was fluent in Urdu and Punjabi, which is the dialect from my region, and but also Arabic because she's Muslim, we're Muslim. And so it was very important to me that she was able to read, write, and recite Arabic properly as well, because I wanted to retain that culture so badly, because I felt like it was lacking in me. Do you guys feel that way also? Do you feel like, this is something you have to share with your children or share with your, your family members, or are you ready to just kind of like move on and give them the opportunity to learn what's here?
I can go first. I definitely want my daughter to continue at least speaking Chinese, if not to write. My older daughter actually spent a few years, actually both of them spent a few years in China. The older one learned to read and write, which I was really, really happy about. Although 2 years staying here, she probably forgot everything she learned, but she does speak pretty well. And the little one speaks, but she doesn't really read and write. And they take classes, and I think that's for me, it's super, super important. Mostly because my family are still there, and I need them to be able to at least communicate without any barrier. And a lot of the culture, I think, the first thing coming to mind is, we speak a different language, right? That language always carries a different meaning. So for them to be able to carry that heritage, and they probably think themselves as American, they were born here, they spent most time here. But the rest of the family, we consider, if I introduce myself, I always say I'm Chinese, right? Even I have become an American citizen, that's my heritage. And I want them to be able to recognize that, and also, be able to sometime, go back to China. When they go back to China, they are able to be part of that culture too, and not just here. So super, super important. And I think most people probably, at least the first generation of immigrants, will definitely try to keep that culture carried on, and make sure that the children are learning that language, at least to some degree, right?
Absolutely. Mr. Lee?
Yes, and be a parent and your kids are all American. So sometimes it's difficult, but I will share my story is, hey, first, the most important thing for my kids able to learn, we speak Chinese Mandarin, is I want them to have ability to communicate with their grandparents, their relatives in the home country. And guess what, this is where we're from. And And I will tell them, hey, the second language, no matter what language, in high school, they offer different German, English, whatever, Spanish. So, hey, you need to learn. But good thing for them is they have advantage to learn Chinese easier because the parents can teach them right away, firsthand. So another thing I share with them is even they grow up, they are American. When people approach, look at the face, they will probably, if they will say Chinese to you right away, and they expect you understand Chinese or Korean, and and I want them, my kids, to be ready, have a international perspective. It's not just we know we all learn English. We're not that good, but we do our best. We learn fast and learn more efficient way to speak English. But I want to have that kind of learning or idea from my kids, my children, and they have absorbed different language. Language is the way to communicate, and you can communicate with those people in Asia, in China, in Taiwan, and that's the advantage. That will help you to open your mind, open your eyes, and open opportunity for your futures. And no matter, they probably won't feel it, but you mentioned you want to learn, and when you go back to your whatever the home country, and they expect you speak language, local language, and if you don't, they treat you like outsider. You're from the other country. Even you just look at each other, you look alike, but they still treat you a little bit different. So I think that's a good tool and skill I like to my kids to learn, and from their early age. And I know it's harder when you go out of high school. They probably don't have time. They don't want to spend a lot of time. But in my case, I send my kids to Sunday school, and every Sunday they go together and have teach them how to speak Mandarin, Chinese, and I think they just build a foundation, and they probably learn like 10%, 20%, depends on how concentrate or what they pay attention. But I think that's good, and that help them. So and bring back their origin, their cultures, and I think that's important. We have to have that put into my next generation.
Yeah, and I was actually talking to my mom the other day, and she said that one of her biggest regrets when it came to parenting is not making sure that we speak our mother tongue of Telugu, which is understandable from her standpoint. I actually think that languages are very beautiful because they each, as Ms. Ling said, have a different meaning to them, and they are part of a culture. But I unfortunately didn't learn Telugu very well. And whenever we go to India, again, like Ms. Shaikh said, I can understand it kind of, but I can't speak it. So I'm speaking to my relatives in broken English. And I also feel like an outsider sometimes because I can't understand what they're saying. And then they'll also speak Hindi. And that's a totally different story because I can't learn Hindi for the life of me. And it's funny because in elementary school, I had Hindu friends. I had friends speak Hindi, and then me and one of my classmates would be like, oh, let's speak Telugu, but both of us were in the same boat. We couldn't speak it. So we would speak what we call Telugu English. So it would basically be English with one word in the sentence that's Telugu, which is really interesting that it's not, our language technically isn't as separate from us as we think it is sometimes, because we do understand it. We do have our parents speak a little bit of it at home, and when we go to school and they ask us, oh, what language do you speak, we'll sometimes say Telugu, we'll sometimes say our mother tongue and stuff like that, and we'll find people who also speak the same language, and we'll reminisce about certain aspects of that language that we find similar common occurrences that we have based on that language, like idioms that don't go to English. The other day we were in the car and we were talking about how a daughter looked like her mom, and my mom said, wow, she came out of her mouth. And I was like, what does that even mean? And after quite a few minutes of confusion from both of our ends, we found out that she was trying to say spitting image, but a Telugu version. So stuff like that. And it's nice that that's things we can relate to with friends, and how language is still our home language and English are still a huge part of who we are.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I agree with you guys completely. Language to me is so incredibly important. When I became an administrator, um, especially in the community that we're in right now, I felt like I was able to break a lot of barriers and, you know, bridge a lot of, you know, gaps that were happening with my parents and with my students because I was able to speak Urdu and Hindi, and I was able to really reach out to the Desi parents. And for those of you who don't know, Desi basically is anyone who is Indian, Pakistani, or Bangladeshi. We call them Desi. And I was able to reach out to a lot of the Desi parents by speaking their language and explaining, you know, why their child was getting in trouble or what was the reason I was calling them. And I also noticed that a lot of our immigrant learners and our ESL learners who spoke either Urdu or Hindi or Punjabi liked it when I, you know, spoke to them in the hallways in their language. They felt like they were more at home, especially if they were new into the country. But I would love to see and hear, Dia, what would your challenges be if, like, you know, growing up, you feel like you didn't have that ability to learn it? Is it something that you would want to learn in the future, or you would want to teach your children, or do you think that after a while through the generations, it's just going to get kind of lost?
So I think I have kind of a unique experience where my parents sent us to Telugu school. They were like, "You're gonna go," and I failed. I failed my first semester, and the second semester they said, "If you pass, you can choose not to go back." And so I worked my butt off and passed. And because of that, I did not want to learn Telugu, which is really, I think over time it will be lost because of this whole like globalization with the internet. You feel as if you can just stay an English speaker your entire life. The only time when I feel like I might benefit from speaking Telugu is when I go back to my home country and I have trouble talking to my relatives. But again, then they know some English. So I think me, along with various other fellow teenagers, American teenagers, we rely on English as being a global language, as an excuse to not learn our home language. And and then there's the fact that I'm interested in languages that have been romanticized in our schools. I would love to learn French and Spanish and stuff like I'm learning ASL right now. But then I have this weird thing against Telugu, which honestly may originate from the fact that when I spoke sometimes broken Telugu in elementary school, or I still had that Telugu accent from being at home and speaking Telugu with my parents, people would kind of look at me weird. There would be, weird things. I think my teacher told some of my Hindi friends sometime when they were speaking Hindi, "What are you saying in Hindi? Why don't you share it with the class?" Not letting them be. I can understand where they're coming from, but I can also understand that my friends sometimes just want to talk in Hindi. And so maybe there's various reasons, but I do think languages are really important. When it comes to my kids, that's way in the future, but what to think about, I guess I would like them to learn languages. I would like them to learn Telugu so that maybe they could have a little secret language with my mom. We'll see.
Thank you, Dia. Mr. Lee and Miss Liu, I would like to like kind of comment on what Dia said. Did you ever feel like you were either targeted or had a challenge because you were speaking your language in public, or you were representing your culture in public? Was there ever a time that you felt uncomfortable because of your culture, religion, or background?
Okay, I can start first. And so far, I haven't had any bad experience or any incident happening. But I think, but recently, I think I just feel there's more Asian in American society I ever feel before, and certainly there's new on the news happen those things, sad things, that happened, and I think that people different, and we Asian being target. Not sure how they started and where they started when they're leaving state. Barely actually bother me, but just recently it seems kind of exaggerate, and I think the Asian society or American, and we need to understand there's no room for hate, and there's no reason you hate Asian people or even different race people, because American is a with different races, people even from different states, they're different. And unfortunately, this incident happened, and we just need to educate your kids, my kids, and political leader, community leader, or educator like yourself. And I think we all responsible kind of bring that right message, or give kids or people right image about not Asian, just like you're not supposed to hate anybody. And we all live in the same society. We're all part of the American. And I still cannot understand you hate because what, based on what aspect, what base. And unfortunately, this pandemic, and that just kind of misleading people. And the people use that as an excuse, because they, whatever the reason, and they try to spread their nonsense, or spread their ideologic, whatever, to the other people, and try to give Asian some responsibility. And it's not fair, and I don't think is wise way to do it. And just need more education and more understanding. Like, we speak different language, you can communicate better, and you learn, and you can get understand, appreciate everybody, and instead of just say, hey, I don't like you. But I think people now going to like anybody, but they just we want to stop that, give them excuse, able to spread those kind of negative image to Asian people especially. And if we don't stop earlier, and they're going to be an issue, and it's too late to do to kind of so I think this is a good way to kind of spread out the messages. Hey, we're Asian, there's no reason to hate Asian, and no matter what reason, it's not right. Just that things I think I need to share with you guys.
Absolutely, thank you. That's a very important message. Ms. Liu?
No, I personally have not been attacked, thank goodness. And I think my experience as the first generation of immigrants is probably different than someone who growing up here in school and being a minority, and that's different, right? So fortunately, I think I have been surrounded by people with open mind, and either it's at work or at school, it's all well-educated people and more open-minded, I think, than the general population. And even Coppell, I think it's a very diversified population living here. So I have always felt very, very safe. With that being said, what has happened since last year, the COVID-19, all the headlines are certainly very, very concerning, to say the least. And I find it hard to explain to my children why all these things are going on, right? Because it's really, like Mr. Lee was saying, it's nonsense, and it's not logical, right? And regular people and normal people wouldn't do such things. So it's hard for me to explain why this are happening and to my children. And I also realize, as a society, including myself, we could be doing more, right? Panelists like this, and conversation, or open conversation about the different races and what's going on in outside of this small society, so everyone has that awareness and feel safe at least to talk about these things, and it's not hidden anymore. I think that's one positive thing coming out of it. At least in the workplace, my company has had a lot of conversation around, the history and why we're here, and all this different discrimination, and how we bring DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion into the workplace. But same thing to the society, right? We all have that responsibility to come together and talk about these things, and recognize we are different. However, we're all just human, and everyone has a place in this society. And especially, I think school can do, as schools are already doing a lot. And my big concern is with the kids. And I hope my children is getting the education they deserve, right? They know what is right, what is wrong. And for it's very, very early for them. So it's very important that we are teaching them the right values so they know what kind of people they want to become, what's the right thing to do, and how to view this world, recognizing there is that sad reality, but also taking initiative to a better world that we can all create.
Absolutely. I love what you said about our education system. When I first came to Coppell, a professional once asked me, or we were talking about, he asked me what my religion was and my cultural background, and I told him I was Muslim. He made the comment, and it was in a, not in a negative way, but he made the comment that, you're so different from your people. I wish your people were more like you. And I could have taken that in a negative way, like most people would have probably, but I felt like it was a great teaching moment. And I explained to him that there's so many different type of people around the world who have a very same religion, but very different cultures and very different ideologies and very different backgrounds. And I have to tell you, recently, our board passed a resolution that really focuses on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in these past couple of years, their focus on making sure that, we don't have any unconscious biases, that we are really supporting the diversity and equity and inclusion in Coppell ISD means a lot to me as an educator, an administrator, and somebody who is a person of color. And so my question to you, Dia, is have you seen changes happening in the social hierarchy within your high school? Have you seen something that really can tell you that, yeah, we are focusing on this and we are going to improve on our reaction towards different cultures and behaviors?
I'm going to be totally honest. From a high school perspective, I feel like a lot of people gravitate to people that are, interested in the same things, that are of the same culture as them. A lot of us have been in this ISD since at least elementary school. I personally have been in it almost 12 years. So you don't really see our friendship, our groups changing, But I will say this, I think in the past year or so, a lot of us have become more educated in our interactions with each other. I mean, forget about like just school in general, in the community. I meet with my they see friends, maybe they see family friends, and sometimes they have these ridiculous biases against people, and me and my sister don't hesitate to call them out, use it, as you said, as a teaching moment, which is necessary, when you meet somebody who does need to be taught or at least explain that some things aren't okay, especially not in this day and age, even though they may use the excuse that they're not from this day and age. They grew to this day and age. And so when you go back to the high school, I feel like a lot of us are, again, we're born with the internet. TikTok is one of our like main platforms, Instagram, and you see the news all the time on those platforms. You are made aware of so many things, so many social movements, so many social trends, and you educate yourself, you learn things, and you realize that the world is just not you and your thoughts. There's so many other thoughts to come across and so many other ideologies. And I think in the past year, when during COVID and all, we're all at home and we're all stuck on these apps, and we all start growing, and we've all started recognizing what's okay, what's not okay, what we believe, and what we'd like to share to others. And so I think, especially in my grade, a lot of us have grown. And I remember I'm a cross country runner, and I've had in ninth grade, I've had some bad experiences, some racist experiences. And a lot of these people, maybe not necessarily apologized. It's been a while, but you can see that they've matured, you can see that they've grown and that they've changed and are much nicer, kinder, and more accepting people. And I feel like I'm not completely aware of the resolution that you're talking about, but I do know that I am seeing changes all around me.
That makes my heart sing, because I have to tell you, we've been working really hard in Coppell ISD to make sure that everyone feels loved and included and accepted. And I'm in a lot of committees, and the #1 topic is that we have to be more inclusive, and we have to understand our demographics, and we have to respect and acknowledge and celebrate the different diverse populations we have in Coppell. And so my question to you guys is if there was one thing you could say to our community at this point, knowing that there is so much issues with Asian American hate, knowing that there's that conflict between Israel and Palestine, knowing that there are so many just dialogue that's happening with different movements of different race issues, the Black Lives Matter movement. If there was one thing that you could say to our community members, what would that be?
Okay, I think I can start first. And I will say is don't make a judgment or decision without do some research or understand the whole circumstance, because people have their own opinion. People may be subjectives for what the preference or your background, your knowledge, and so on. So don't jump to conclusion because you get the from the internet, from the social media platform, and you like the tone, you like the whatever the anchor, and that is not the right way. You have to understand better. You have to use your knowledge and use your do some research, talk to the people, or get look at the big picture instead very narrative, one sentence, or and they show it on the TV or whatever people say it, and you just follow it, and just be open mind. And because the world is different, if you are the people leave that area, that country, you probably have no idea what kind of situation, what kind of challenge they face in that area, that country. Because we'll be honest, we're American, we're living in states. We don't know what exactly people face the challenge, how they handle their real life. They make their own choice, their own decision, different policy. We might disagree, but don't jump conclusions and say, hey, you're wrong, right? And then who give you a right to make that judgment? And they might be different, they might not be the perfect, but hey, nobody's perfect. So the way I would say is don't jump to the conclusion or follow this media and make the quick judgment. And that's somehow you will regret you make that once you understand better. And I think some leader or like educator, we think we need to set a higher standard. We need to be a role model and kind of look at different perspective, both sides, because they if you don't look at both sides, pros and cons, you probably don't know what is the best answer or the best conclusion you probably need made. So that's that I can share.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much. Ms. Liu, did you want to add anything to that?
I'll just to quickly add, I think fundamentally we're just all human and we value the same, right? We value families, we value freedom, and that's why people come to this place, and it is one of the best countries in the world, and recognizing that I think is important, right? So that's the foundation. You don't look at people based on their color, you don't look at people based on the language they speak. We also all have a responsibility to educate people around us and educate ourselves. And as we sit on this panelist, and I don't know enough about Indian culture. I don't know enough about Pakistani culture, right? So it is my responsibility to at least to know my neighborhood and know the people around me and know their culture. And it's also my responsibility to tell people what Chinese culture is, right? So that's, I think if we can do that for people, for ourselves, for people around us, for our next generation, then that's the first step. We are moving towards a better direction, a better world.
All right.
I think the biggest advice I give to people is to trust the progress, and that can be applied to so many different things, but the way I'm applying it right now is that times have changed. I talk to a lot of adults, and some of them say, you know, times are different back where I'm from. Time is great in that way. It's benevolent. You're not placed in 2021 from the 1970s. You have lived that entire time, and you see the world changing around you. And like Ms. Ling said, educate yourself. Your political opinion and your morals are your own. So make sure you know that you have the foundation and education to say what you want to say. Because ignorance isn't bliss, it's stupidity. It really is. You have to be aware of what's going around you.
Thank you so much, Dia. I'm going to go ahead now and kind of ask the audience. I really can't see who's in the audience, and I can't see the chat. So I'm going to ask if Dennis, if you can go ahead and let us know if there were any questions from the audience for these amazing panelists.
Sure. We haven't gotten any that I've seen yet, but want to invite the audience, like you did, to add any questions that they may be feeling they'd like to ask into the chat. I guess one that I could start us off with is we began our conversation talking a lot about language. I was wondering if there was any other features for the panelists of their mother culture that they feel especially proud of or attached to, and that that they enjoy sharing with the rest of us here in America.
I mean, for me, it's biryani. I make it for my staff all the time. I mean, that's just the cooking is it. That's for me.
Food can often be a great unifier. I agree. We can get together over food.
Yeah. I do a lot of home cooking Chinese food, and also I celebrate all the major Chinese holidays, Chinese New Year, Moon Festival, and all the traditions, at least the biggest ones. And that's one thing that I think the children or next generation, they will remember. They may not be able to speak the language, but they always remember the fantastic food and what we do during those holidays. So that's definitely one thing. I think it's common too, right? Here with people celebrate Christmas, Thanksgiving, and there is always a similar holiday, in the rest of the world. So there is no, in my opinion, it's time to get together with family and celebrate. So from that perspective, we're just all the same.
I think one of the most beautiful things about cultures of various minorities is how they use colors. They're so beautiful in their festivals, in their weddings, their occasions, their dresses, their outfits, their food. The colors they use are just gorgeous.
I will say is the language you speak, the language, the instantly they'll bring in the difference, break the barrier. And I speak Mandarin, and I can no problem to talk to people from China, from every Chinese, as long as they speak Mandarin or Chinese, and that will bring, they'll broke the barriers. And I will keep tell my kids and the way people why you need to learn different language. That just help you to more effectively communicate with people and there's no distance. They will instantly become a friend. They're willing to open to you, and we'll share a story. And when I was in Taiwan, and I actually help one people speak American speak English. So even I'm like local guy to him, and he just like, wow, you where are you from? You're from Texas. Just like suddenly you become a friend, because it's not every people speak English in Taiwan. So, and that certainly will become a good friend again, because I can communicate better with them. So I share that experience. Hey, they open your eyes, give you more opportunity, open your door to you to different people and to different cultures.
All right.
Thank you all. We had one. We now have a couple questions coming in the chat. Tracy Fisher asked when, and this is probably for Mr. Lee and Miss Ling, when you became American citizens, did you have to give up your other citizenship?
Yes, I did. Because China, the China government does not recognize dual citizenship, so you have to choose either or. And I think that's, just again, for me to give up that and choose to be American citizen based on many reasons. And there's one of the biggest reason is I see the diversity in the country. I see the freedom. I have experience all these years, through school and work. It resonates with me, right? That's why I decided to become US citizen. So that even, it broke my heart even more when I saw what's going on in the past couple of years. Because it's not the value this country is founded on. So I recognize what Dia is saying. We are making progress. Sometimes we may have to take a step back before we can take 2 steps forward. Totally agree. And I think again, coming out of all this bad news is we are all sitting here talking about our cultures, right? And this is my first time, and I know we had multiple events before, but I am hoping that we will see more and more of these things happen.
And as I understand, Taiwan allowed dual citizenship, and unless you go through the legal process to give up your Taiwanese citizenship, and I think this dual citizenship is the way. I didn't give up because I don't want to go through all those legal procedures. That's too much work for me.
Right. If it's that much of a hassle to let it go, there's no harm in keeping it, then that makes perfect sense. Another question is, are there, and this is for, I guess, for all of our panelists, are there any upcoming or I guess recent cultural events that any of you would like to recommend that we attend or learn more about the culture?
I know this month is the Asian Pacific Heritage Month. I don't know if there is anything special we're doing. I mean, this is something special, I guess. I'm not aware of any other big events going on. We do have holidays, I think, or Chinese holidays throughout the year. Every month or every other month, there is a big one. If I know there is any group celebrations, we'll make sure that we communicate and invite the community to join us and celebrate those holidays.
I think for people who are not of Indian Hindu culture and would like to participate in some festivals, some of the best ones to participate in are Holi, and I believe that's around March, and then Diwali, which is later in the year. Holi is, I think, the way we celebrate is we throw paints at each other. There's a lot of religious background with it, but I think that's a way to celebrate, a way to look at it. And usually in these type of festivals, they'll also give you some type of background. There will be people telling you stories. Diwali is a festival of lights. I was actually named after the Diwali candle, which is called a diya. It's spelled D-I-Y-A, and my dad thought the Y was useless, so he took out the Y at the last second. And so, yeah, those are some festivals that would be really fun to enjoy. And Miss Shaikh, if I'm not mistaken, Eid was recently?
Yeah, so we just finished Ramadan, which is a month of fasting, and that includes not eating or drinking, including water, from sun up to sundown, which this year was from around 4 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock in the evening. And then we had our celebration, which was Eid. And so you'll see I have like the henna that's coming off now. It was last week. Lots of fun. We have another one. We have 2 major Islamic celebrations. The other one is in a month and a half, and it's called Eid al-Adha, which is basically we celebrate when Abraham was asked to slaughter or sacrifice his son and instead was given the chance to slaughter a goat. And so that is something we celebrate in Islam as well.
Thank you. Excellent. I'm sorry, Mr. Lee.
Oh yeah, I would just say biggest Chinese holiday is Chinese New Year, and another thing probably is upcoming is like Mooncake Festival, because I lost track of the exact date, but this is the biggest Chinese holiday we celebrate.
Fantastic. I look forward to learning more about mooncake holiday. I know Chinese New Year has been a very widely celebrated event, especially for the library in recent years. So we look forward to learning more about mooncake holiday as well. A couple of questions about language that I think we may have to skip over since we spent so much time talking about it earlier, but I guess a couple more to kind of round out our hour together this afternoon. One specifically for Dia is how would you say you go about navigating culture at home and the larger culture outside of it? Do you have challenges in assimilating between the two? I think we touched a bit on this earlier, but is there anything else you'd like to add about how you navigate the sort of dual culture aspect of your life?
I think one of the things about my experience is that my parents are very open-minded. They let us do what we want to do, and I'm extremely passionate about learning about different religions. I love learning about different cultures. I love looking at people's ideology, where their reasoning for certain things come up, how they believe in certain faiths. And my parents have let me do that. So I've been so immersed in so many different cultures that I don't have a problem assimilating. I have been able to really understand a lot of different people, various at many times in school, at home, in my after school activities. I do think there are times when you meet somebody who's just kind of ignorant, will say some things, but I think all of us have learned how to live with it. There are certain things you'll say, hey, that's not okay. There's certain things you brush aside for the sake of keeping the atmosphere relatively light. But when it comes to assimilation, yeah, I've been pretty good, actually. I think a lot of the teenagers around me as well have been able to assimilate, especially since we're in Coppell. There's so many different races that in school we meet so many different people, and I think that's another reason why I've been able to learn about all these different cultures.
Thank you. I guess the last question that we have from the chat so far, and I guess this would be open to all of our panelists, and I suppose even our moderator as well. We've spoken a bit this afternoon about the recent rise in crimes against Asian Americans, or at least the increased visibility of crimes against Asian Americans, perhaps. And though thankfully you've all shared, I believe, that you haven't experienced very much of that directly, has that caused you to take any affirmative steps or make changes to your habits or to safeguard yourself or your family?
I did for the first time bought 3 bottles of pepper spray. Not sure if I haven't been able to use it, and hopefully I won't be able to use it. It's in the back of my mind, honestly. We definitely don't want to go out when it's dark, and we don't go to places where not many people are around. So it's a reminder that I'm not ready to take off of my mind, unfortunately. And just some personal experience earlier this year, we celebrate Chinese New Year, and in China, normally you put the signs, right, with a poem, something along the lines of poem outside the door. And my family just asked me not to do that this year. Instead, we put inside of the house, because we don't want to, or the concern is you don't want to broadcast that, hey, there was a Chinese family living here. I find that it very, very sad that we had to do that. But hopefully, all the safeguard and all these concerns will go away as we work together to solve this problem.
So for me, most recently, growing up, I was always told to keep your head down. Don't be prominent. Don't talk too much. Don't talk about politics. Stay quiet. I have a 16-year-old daughter who goes to New Tech High Coppell. And just like Dia was talking about, with TikTok and Instagram and all of the other social media that's happening, she's been posting a lot more about the different crises that are happening across the Middle East and Asia. And it terrifies me, and it shouldn't, but it does. And I constantly have to have that discussion with her. I was like, Mom, stop putting things out in public, stop posting things about this, stop, me, because I'm so afraid that she's going to be targeted for something. And she takes it very like, Mom, we have to speak up, Mom, we have to talk about it. Mom, I'm just posting things that are like, I believe in. And I agree with her, but still that fear just never goes away of, just stay quiet. Shh, shh. Don't share your opinion.
Yeah, actually, I was just about to talk about that. Our generation's weapon is social media. And so that's our like, I've had multiple friends constantly posting, constantly reposting, constantly sharing, tweeting, things that trying to raise awareness. And I think they believe every single share counts. And I agree. I mean, anything to raise awareness, to make people understand what's really happening in the world. And it's interesting that you, Ms. Shai, come with that perspective, like try to make sure that you're not being too much out there, which is understandable. But I think sometimes we're young. We also disregard the fact that certain things may happen to us. We always have that mindset, oh, it won't happen to us, it'll happen to other people. But again, that is our sole way to help the world from our confines of the room we're in.
For my side, our life didn't change anything, didn't do any precautionary or try to prevent, or the approach I give to my kids, just kind of explain to my children and give them some correct image. And the one thing I need to say to my kids or to everybody is free speech. And you can disagree, but you cannot stop people to say it and to be the way yourself. So be yourself. And it's not going to change the other people, but just, hey, you have to know where you stand, and you have your principles, and agreed, people have right to say what they want to say, but you're not prevent them to say it. But for yourself, you're going to make a judgment and understand right or wrong. And as a parent, I just have to set a standard, educate them, and for them to ready to face the challenge, face the real world. It's going to happen no matter when, how, and they're going to be, would want to have my kids ready to face challenge for their life.
Did anyone have any other questions for us?
No, I believe that was the last question that we had in the chat.
All right. This was truly a privilege for me, just to be able to not only sit with our community members and our audience, but to sit with one of our own students in Coppell ISD was a huge privilege for me. So thank you, Dia. Thank you, Mr. Lee. Thank you, Ms. Liu. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you for organizing this. I realized a lot of this can't be done with a lot of people working behind the scenes. So thank you all for your effort and time, and today too, spending time with the three of us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And a big thanks to not only to our panelists, but also to our moderator and everybody who was able to join us today. I think this is the point where if we were together in the same room, we would have a round of applause. So we'll have a virtual round of applause for all of our panelists for the time and that you've given to us today, and for being willing to step up and share your stories. I know I can speak as someone who's lived in America my whole life, how heartening it is to hear how the struggles and challenges that you all have faced in your journeys, and the kinds of things that recent events cause you to think of or have to think of that the rest of us may not be able to really relate to as well. So it all goes back to the power of hearing other people's stories. So I know it's certainly been inspirational, educational for me, and I believe for lots of folks who have been here with us today. So on behalf of everybody, I want to thank you all. And before we close out today, I want to speak briefly to the audience and let them know that if that this program and the Meet Your Neighbor series is a program that's put on with library staff and in conjunction with a committee of community members called the Community Builders, who have been really active and involved in a lot of the efforts that the library has made to celebrate the diversity of cultures in our community. And just want to close out our day today by extending an invitation to anybody who wants to help make more programs like this possible, to reach out to library staff and ask how you can become an active member of our Community Builders Committee, because we certainly want to continue to provide opportunities for these kinds of conversations to happen, not only because it's something that the library is interested in doing, but also because it's part of our larger city effort for Coppell Vision 2040 to foster an inclusive community fabric. And this is a prime example of the kind of program that goes toward that. So I want to issue an invitation to anybody here who's interested in being a continuing part of this kind of effort to reach out to the library and ask how you can join the committee. And again, to extend a very heartfelt thanks to our panelists and our moderator for giving your time today to be with us this afternoon and to share with us all of your experiences so that we can all become better people and learn from them. So thank you all.
Thank you.
And with that will close out our day. So thank you all and have a wonderful rest of the afternoon and a wonderful rest of the weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good weekend. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.